Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 96 of 2024. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. Follow me at Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media /The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag for an up to $1,000 sign-up bonus. Please visit this podcast description. Terms, conditions, location apply. For the support the Odds Breakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. Pick any winning cappers to get the premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com. And if nothing else, please visit the Odds Breakers and become a free Picks and Telegram subscriber. All right, here we are off a good Monday Night Football. We hit the other leg of the teaser. So I was happy about that, but this is not an NFL pod because this is our college football pod. We're actually going to talk to a wonderful guest in Mr. Brian Edwards from Florida Gator fan, and talk a little bit about the SEC, a little bit about the college football ratings and rankings and all that fun stuff, and obviously get into the huge games coming up for the weekend. But before Brian comes on, just want to remind y'all, all our monthly packages are guaranteed or your money back. So we're one of the few, if only, services that does that. We stand by if you're going to be profitable or not, and if the capper you choose that says guaranteed on this monthly is not profitable, we give you your money back for that month. So that's how we're doing things nowadays at the Odds Breakers. Make sure you check us out at theoddsbreakers.com for more information. So I'm going to go into a little college football ATS and over-under trends before Mr. Brian comes on. I'm still a little bit under the weather. This is day 7 for me. I mean, last night I went to bed at 8, took a bunch of NyQuil, woke up at 1 a.m., took ibuprofen PM, woke up at 6:37. So I actually slept good finally for the first time in forever. And I actually feel better today. It's not gone, but I definitely feel a lot better today, so I'm really happy about that. So let's get into these ATS trends. So right now, Army is leading the top at 7-1-1. Plus 10 ATS margin. Then Tulane 9-2 plus 13.6 ATS margin. Indiana 8-2 plus 14.6 ATS margin. Obviously a huge game for Indiana coming up. Arizona State 8-2, Marshall 8-2, Colorado 8-2, Notre Dame 7-2-1, Minnesota 7-2-1. There is a heck of a lot of 7-3s out there. Baylor, BYU, Ball State, South Carolina, Eastern Michigan, Pittsburgh, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Colorado State, Mississippi, or Ole Miss, and Florida International. It's weird to see Florida International as such a good covering team this year. So those are your best covering teams and your best fade teams. Start at the bottom with Georgia State, 1-7-2. It looks like that whole win against Vanderbilt really made people think they were better than they were. Arizona, 2-8. Oregon State, 2-8. Purdue, 2-8. NC State, 2-7-1. North Carolina, 2-7-1. Florida State, 2-7-1. Liberty, 2-7. And there's quite a few 3-7 teams. We'll just run them down. Actually, there's a ton of them. Middle Tennessee State, Utah, Florida Atlantic, TCU, Michigan, Southern Miss, LSU, Georgia. Poor Georgia. They covered last week, though, didn't they? Oklahoma State, Utah State, Kansas State, Texas A&M, and Air Force, all 3-7 against the spread. Was really happy to be on Air Force last week. That was a fun game, and glad we hit that one. But those are your best fade teams so far this year. I think there's value on a few of those bottom feeders, and we'll get into that when Brian gets on. Let's talk totals. We have best over teams. Ball State 8-1-1, North Texas 8-2, Iowa 8-2, Miami 7-2-1, UCF 7-2-1. Then you have Akron at 8-3, New Mexico at 8-3, and then there's just a ton of 7-3 teams. Indiana, West Virginia, Mississippi State, Maryland, Southern Methodist or SMU, Baylor, Navy, UTSA, Utah State, BYU, Toledo, Charlotte, Boise State, Jacksonville State, and Louisville. So all these teams have been going over. Now for your unders, best unders team is Houston, 1 over 9 unders, 1 for 9. Florida State, 2-8. Mississippi, 2-8. Georgia Tech, 2 unders, 7 or 2 over 7 unders in 1 push. App State 2 6-1. Washington 3-8. Then there's quite a few 3-7 teams. LSU, Utah, Nebraska, North Carolina, Penn State, James Madison, Sam Houston State, Illinois, Virginia, Bowling Green, Kennesaw State, Kentucky, and there you go. That's your 3 over 7 unders teams. These teams love to go under the total. So here, that's where we're at for week 13 here. Kind of just getting this season over with. Soon it's going to be Thanksgiving. Need to find a great guest for Thanksgiving next week. I have a couple in mind. Probably going to have a show on Tuesday. So for Wednesday morning will probably be our Thanksgiving show. And we're only going to do one that week because I'm going to enjoy my Thanksgiving weekend. And we'll just combine NFL and college football. So you could fast forward if you need to, if you don't like the NFL side or if you don't like the college football side. We obviously don't like it when it's too long for you. But speaking of too long, let's get right into our guest, Mr. Brian Edwards at Vegas B. Edwards from Major Wager and Vegas Insider. Now I'm very excited to welcome back an amazing handicapper and great friend of the show. You've heard him on many radio broadcasts and podcasts across the country. You can find some of his work on Vegas Insider and MajorWager.com. I'm happy to bring back Mr. Brian Edwards from Major Wager and Vegas Insider. You can follow Brian on Twitter or X at Vegas B. Edwards. Brian, here we are, my man. Welcome back. Getting close to Thanksgiving, turkey time. How's life out there on the Panhandle?
It's great, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a minute. I guess we talked or I guess I did a show with you in like July or August, and things are good. Having a good NFL season. College has not been that great, but some teams have been doing me right. Others have not done me right. But yeah, all is good in my world, and thanks for having me.
All's good in the hood. It's I'm still fighting a little virus, so for anyone out there watching, you might lose my voice at some point, but just bear with me here. I've had this thing since last Thursday, Brian. It's going around, especially when you have kids. It's going around right now, so I'm ready to roll, though, and the SEC's ready to roll, too, because there's all kinds of playoff talks right now. There's lots of upset people that are SEC fans. It's one of those weird situations where it's like, well, you loaded your conference up with great teams, but hey, man, what do you expect? It's like if you want to, be in a playoff scenario, are we supposed to make this the SEC Invitational? It's just one of those things,
right?
It's I get there. There's a lot of sides that I see. I just wish that they had real criteria instead of bullshitting us the whole time because they don't. But how many SEC teams do you see making the playoffs, man? What do you think this committee is going to do at the end of the day?
Well, right now, only 4, but we've got a lot of football left. Notre Dame could get clipped this Saturday in the Bronx against Army, or out in SoCal next week. Who does Penn State have the next 2? I don't.
Minnesota this week, but they're gold.
So, and Maryland at home, yeah, they're gold. I guess the other team is now Indiana is going to handle Purdue next week, but if Ohio State was to super duper smoke them, like 49-3. Maybe that could clear the way for a 5th SEC team, possibly. But, so Tennessee has got to take care of its own business and hope for help. But otherwise, as long as Ole Miss and Georgia and Alabama and Texas went out, but Texas, I think they're going to get all they can handle in both of these next 2 games, even though they are obviously enormous favorites at home to Kentucky. But I think they're going to get all they can handle in both of these upcoming games. And Texas is a team that if they lose again, I mean, they don't like their wins have not aged well. I mean, not really their fault that, Michigan is so down, but here we are going into week 13. They only have 2 wins over teams with winning records. Now they have wins over multiple teams that are 5-5, but so that could change after this weekend. But right now, Colorado State at 7-3, and Vanderbilt at 6-4 are their only wins against teams that have a winning record right now. So if Texas loses either of these games, they could be in trouble. Now, obviously, they could be replaced by A&M if that's the game they lose. And then obviously, the 2 teams that get to the SEC championship game, if A&M is one of those teams and got blown out, I don't know. But right now, I think the 4 that are in are looking good if they went out. And then there's obviously A&M and Tennessee hovering. And A&M doesn't really have to worry about where they're ranked because they will make an enormous jump if they handle their business at home against Texas. So if Texas A&M fans are pissed off right now, take a chill pill and just handle your business and you'll be fine.
It's funny. I'm not sure if they'll be fine. I guess that would be the ranked team. They do have a win. They don't have right now. I have 4 in myself, and Tennessee's the odd one out because I think what you should need to go by, and when all these teams have 2 losses, and God, of course, it's going to end up this way, right? Just draw pure chaos, and I almost feel like it benefits the SEC more to have it like this. Because it's more to talk about, obviously, and they're still going to get a bunch of teams in, no matter what. It benefits them that everyone has 2 losses and that there's not a couple teams that are undefeated. It really does. But what I think is that I'm looking at a best road win type scenario. I think you got to go for, and I don't like Tennessee because of that. I think that they had their opportunities. Now, don't get me wrong. I watched that Tennessee-Georgia game. Tennessee could have had an NFL squad. They weren't going to win that game. But Alabama, they got them at home. They just don't have a lot of great road wins there. And when I look at like Ole Miss, they have a better resume. So right now I would say Tennessee's out. But you're absolutely right. There's a ton of football coming up here. Here's my big problem with the Indiana argument, Brian. They say to schedule hard teams. Well, it's not Indiana's fault that the number 1 and number 2 team last year sucks. They're on their schedule. It's hard to punish them for that. It's like, even if they do get blown out at Ohio State, it's like, can't you give them one hiccup here? It's almost like they're playing for the life because of this strength of schedule that just did not work out their way. I saw some funny tweet that said they should just bench their quarterback to keep them healthy because last year someone got punished from it. It's kind of funny. It's like, will they get punished by getting blown out if they bench their quarterback? It's so bad that they don't have criteria. It just makes it a lot of great discussion, but we're just a bunch of empty voices here because it doesn't freaking matter. Right now I have Tennessee out, but if A&M takes out Texas, I bump A&M over Texas. I think I agree with you on that one.
And then A&M would be in the SEC championship game too.
Right.
And could even add to its resume even more. But then again, they could lose and then have a third loss, and then things get interesting. But as far as Indiana, no team has been better to me than Indiana all year. I love me some Kurt Cignetti, and I know we'll talk about that game here in a little bit. But yeah, I'm not one that's bashing Indiana's resume. I know the strength of schedule is bad, but when you're absolutely blasting every team and covering easily week in and week out, you can only do what you can do on the field. And so, yeah, we'll see.
All right. Well, good stuff. Let's talk some overrated, underrated, buy low, sell high, whatever you want to crunch it with. It's a good exercise. I know it's kind of getting late in the season for it, but I like buy low, sell high because it could be a bet you're making this week, or you're just maybe waiting till rivalry week or something like that. But we'll start with buy low. I'll start with buy low. The whole thing about teams is that in college football, you're allowed to get better, and I kind of feel like this team is starting to look pretty good. I know that they played a team that gave up in Hawaii last week, But Utah State is a team I'm kind of circling on. They're just god awful in the beginning of the season. I mean, they lost to freaking Temple. That really tells you all you need to know. But then they play UNLV and they score 34, and they beat Wyoming at home. They lose to Washington State, but they put up 28. But then they just kind of bull rushed Wyoming or Hawaii, and Hawaii just couldn't even really score. And I kind of think that, this team's not going to make a bowl, but I think they're just kind of fighting at the end. So Utah State always has had the offense. They just haven't had the defense to play good. But they're playing San Diego State up this weekend. Now it's 4.5, so it's kind of a high spread, but I might be laying it with them. So that's my buy low team, Brian.
Well, I'll stay in the Mountain West. And how about Air Force? Because, they get off to the 1-6 straight up start, 0-7 ATS, and then they caught a break with Bryson Daly being out and covered at Army, and now they've got back-to-back wins in the Mountain West. They beat Fresno 36-28 and Oregon State 28 bagel. So a team that was like auto fade in September, October has now covered 3 in a row, and I like their chances at Nevada this week at either +3 or 3.5 at last look. So they're a team that, was not doing much of anything right all year until the last 2 weeks. And they had a good defensive effort, 3 weeks ago at Army. And, you look at Troy Calhoun in the last decade, his if we exclude the, shortened 2020 season when they went 3-3, I mean, his lowest win total in the last decade is 5. And they've got 3 right now. So maybe they win these next 2 and get to 5. If not, that'll be his worst team in a decade. So maybe Air Force is a good look to buy low.
Oh, dude, I love it. I bought low on them last week and cashed in against Oregon State. So I totally agree with you. I think this is one improving team, and I think next year Air Force is going to be good. So one of those academies that play the triple option. Well, when they replace everybody, they suck, but they get better and better and better. It's just the way the cycle works on these teams. In Nevada, 129th in rushing defensive rush success rate, 120 or 113th in rushing EPA on defense. They look prime for the taking this week, man. I just wrote this down. Yeah, I'll be eyeing up some Nevada. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Now, how about Sell High now? Sell High, I have a team, and I know you picked this game, so maybe you're going to be on the opposite of it, but I didn't bet it yet. I'm kind of selling Missouri High a little bit. I know they had a great effort at South Carolina last week, but that loss took them out of the playoffs in their minds. So I kind of have to wonder what their minds are going in this week. Now they can still make a New Year's Six bowl type situation, or play on New Year's. They could. I don't know how that works completely now with the playoffs, but I do know their bowl still could be good. But I'm not sold that Missouri's that good of a team, and I think that Brady Cook is. I bet on them as soon as I found out he was in right before the game started. I bet on him. I'm glad I did, but he's more of a chase guy. I think that, laying margin and points with him is not something I'm going to be excited about in the future. So I think I'm going to Sell High in Missouri.
Sell High. I'm kind of struggling with this one. I will throw out, no, I don't want to do that. I'm blanking on a Sell High.
Let's come back to it.
Okay.
Let's come back to Sell High. I'm sure one will pop in your mind. Let's get in some games because we have a lot to talk about, my man.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we have Friday games going on. You have Temple, UTSA. You have Purdue, Michigan State, and UNLV, San Jose State. I don't think I can bet on San Jose State for the next 3 years after what happened last weekend to me at my plus 14.5 on that game. I'm still hurting over it. Not going to lie. I think it made my sickness worse. Like maybe my cold would have been gone by Sunday, but since San Jose State did this to me, I'm still completely, the virus is just taking over, So I don't have anything for the Friday games. Any leans real quick, or should we move on?
Well, I think if you're look, if it hits 7 or you want to buy the half point, I think UNLV could be a look. I think on Thursday, um, that Georgia Tech is a good money line parlay team, or maybe even a teaser. I don't know that I want to lay 9, but I definitely think Georgia Tech wins that game. Um, yeah, so yeah, we can move on.
Oh, absolutely. So I actually Frank reached out too, talked about Georgia Tech, said they're at a fade spot. They beat up Miami, week off facing NC State. He's going to be on NC State. My problem with NC State is that they're so inconsistent and they crap all over themselves a lot, and they did that to my over last week or two when I had Duke NC State over. It's just they make stupid mistakes constantly, so that's what worries me a little bit. But I see what you're saying in that one. Georgia Tech, could be a fade spot, coming off of that big letdown spot that they beat Miami, but it's still a dog that could have some fleas with NC State. So those are my thoughts on that. But thanks for reaching out, Frank. I appreciate it. Let's talk about the games. Kentucky is the one you picked, the first one. And obviously we talked about Texas a little bit. Kentucky's playing Texas, and Texas is hanging 21 points right now. There's a total out there at 47, and maybe you have a play on this one. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I like Kentucky a lot in this game. So Texas is obviously in a vintage look-ahead situation. I guess it's debatable who their biggest rival is out of Oklahoma and A&M. I'm sure a lot of people would argue it's A&M. Now, granted, they haven't played since 2011, but at least that's in state. And next week's game is going to have SEC and CFP implications, assuming the Aggies take care of business at Auburn, which is not which is easier said than done. But Texas is mired in a 1-3 against the spread slump. Pretty good defensive effort last week, but it was a little sloppy offensively. And did you say there are 21s? Because if not, I want to buy the half point to 21.
There's a 21 at DK right now, minus 112.
Okay. All right. Well, so Kentucky is they have been a double-digit underdog 3 times this year, and they are 3-0 against the spread with one outright win at Ole Miss, and they've covered those 3 games by 47 combined points. They were catching the big number at home to Georgia, catching 22. Game they led nearly the entire way, and ended up losing 13-12. But I mean, it was right there for the taking. A couple weeks later, they go to Ole Miss plus 500 on the money line. Plus, I think they closed at plus 15, but they were around plus 17 a good bit of time that week, and they went outright. And then they go to Tennessee, and they were all beat up. J.J. Weaver, their longtime starting defensive end, he was out for that game. Their leading tackler, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, he was out for that game. Their leading tackler from last year, De'Aric Jackson, was out. Now he's out for the season. And their stud corner, Maxwell Hairston, who was a second-team All-SEC pick last year when he had 5 interceptions, he was out for a 5th game in a row with a shoulder injury. And yet they had the lead in the second half against Tennessee and were right there to win it, in the second half, had all kinds of opportunities. Now they end up losing 28-18, but they easily cover. So since then, they had an off week. Then they beat Murray State 48-6. So Maxwell Hairston returned for that game after missing those 5 games in a row. So he's back, and they are very optimistic that J.J. Weaver and Jamon Dumas-Johnson will be back this week. Obviously, they've had the open date, and then, he wasn't going to play those guys against Murray State. I think they felt Hairston was ready and let him shake some rust off. I don't think he played that many snaps, but at least he got out there a little bit. And so anyway, I think those 2 key guys are going to be back on defense. But even without those guys, they held a Tennessee team in Knoxville, held them in check offensively for most of that game. So, look, I know Kentucky's had a disappointing season. They're at 4-6, but they're going in thinking they're going to win this game and beat Louisville, who they've beaten 5 years in a row, and they still think they're going to get bowl eligible. So they're highly motivated here. They're feeling a little better about their personnel, getting some key guys back, and maybe the offense got a little confidence back. I know it was Murray State, but having a little bit of success out there on the field can kind of get your confidence back a little bit. And so I like Kentucky plus 21 at Texas.
No, I'm with you. Texas is kind of one of my teams that I possibly put a sell high to. Obviously, the schedule and what they didn't look that great against an Arkansas team that's pretty bad. Texas does have a pretty good defense. So it's one of those things I was looking at. I would wonder if team total on Texas under is not a bad look either. What
is that number?
Oh, God. I let me just throw in 21. It's got to be pretty high because the total is only 47. So wouldn't that make the game like, 20 or I guess 30 to 10? No, wait, 33 to 14? Almost, maybe. No, 30. It would actually be like 35 to 13 or something like that because it's a 21-point spread. But 34-13. That's what it would be. I think 34 is a lot of points against a good Kentucky defense. So I'm with you. I kind of like both sides. I'm just worried about Kentucky's offense a little bit. Vandergrift.
I like that thought, Kiev. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm looking at Kentucky's page. I mean, the only team that scored more than 34 is the Gators, who scored 48. I know we had one pick six that game. I don't know if we had another one. And then they gave up South Carolina to 31, but I think South Carolina had at least one, maybe even two defensive touchdowns that game. So I kind of like that team total under thought from you. My bad, I interrupted you.
Well, no, I appreciate it. And also, because they could shut it down if they're up, 27, 28 to 3. They could shut it down just because they have that big game on the docket. So team total under for me, but I see the 21 too. I like both. So let's look at that, and I'll mark you down for Kentucky. So let's move on to the next game here.
Let me say one more. Let me just say one more thing. For our listeners, pay attention to the status of J.J. Weaver and Jamon Dumas-Johnson. The first injury report comes out tonight at 8 Eastern on Wednesday.
Awesome. And where could they get that injury report?
It's on the SEC website. Here, I've got it on my favorites right here. Let's see. So it is secsports.com /FB reports. secsports.com /FB reports.
All right. Good. No, good stuff. It's always great to get good places for injury reports because, they're so fragmented and a lot of them are done just real sloppy,
Yeah, SEC is good about updating them. They update them at 8 o'clock Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then I want to say it's like Friday afternoon, possibly, maybe. And then they do it again Saturday. I don't know. I think it's a certain amount of hours before your kickoff. You have to submit it. If you just put that on your favorites, secsports.com /FB reports, it's always getting updated.
All right, I put 2 R's there. FB reports. All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next game then. And I picked Arizona versus TCU, and TCU's laying about 11.5. The total of this game, 59 or so, 59.5 it looks like. I'm playing this game. This could be a good betting game in my opinion. Arizona's coming off a rare win against Houston. More of a misleading box score, but, if they win out, they could still make a bowl, but that doesn't mean they're any good, if you're Arizona, was your goal to travel to El Paso or Boise, Idaho and play on December 19th? Probably not. Right. TCU, on the other hand, they just keep getting better, and it's one of those teams that I believe in the coach and Sonny Dykes. The Frogs have won 3 of the 4 last games. Looking at the metrics, TCU has a nice 1.63 net yards per play advantage over the Cats. They cleaned up some of those early season turnovers. They ranked 19th in offensive success rate, 17th in offensive EPA. The Cats are supposed to have an offense with Fafita and T-Mac, but that's really all they have, and people are just blanketing T-Mac, man, and that works. That means nobody else is open because the rest of the team isn't good. And the team only ranks 107th in offensive success rate, 98th in offensive EPA, even with those two guys. With the Cats, they if they can't throw the ball, they lose. And TCU's defense is very good against the pass. It's not the greatest defense in the world, but 39th in opponent passing success rate, 52nd in defensive pass EPA. And Arizona doesn't have a run game, whereas their weakness. It's a great spot coming off the bye for TCU. Arizona's in a sandwich spot. They beat Houston, and they got Arizona State to look ahead to. And they want to ruin Arizona State's problems coming up here. So I think they just kind of mail it in here. This is a Frogs game for me. I'm laying the big points at 11.5 for 3 stars, Brian.
I agree with you. I made TCU 14.5. You look at Arizona's road games. They lost 56-12 at UCF. They lost 41-19 at BYU. Now they did get a win outright at Utah, but they were in a good spot there. They were coming off their open date, and they lost 31-7 at K-State. So we are in agreement there. I'm definitely a lean to TCU, and that might be one of my plays.
All right, good stuff. Glad we have some agreement. I just marked that down. TCU minus 11.5. So the next game is BYU versus Arizona State. ASU is laying -3, total 48.5. You know what's special about this one, Brian?
Were they both predicted to finish 15th and 16th in the preseason at Big 12 Media Days, maybe?
That, and I'm taking my son to this game at ASU, my friend, and it is going to be an electric atmosphere. It's going to have playoff implications because the winner of this game most likely is going to go to the championship game for the Big 12, and the winner of that game is going to make the playoffs. So this is going to be awesome. I'm very excited to bring my son to this game. But you picked it, so I was like, yes, Brian's picked the game I'm going to, so I'm excited to hear what you got.
Yeah, so I have Arizona State -3. They're 8-2, both straight up and against the spread. They are undefeated at home, 5-0. Both straight up and ATS, regardless of venue, on a 3-game winning streak, both straight up in ATS, and 5-1, both straight up in ATS. In their last 6, I made ASU a 4.5 point favorite, and they might be off their best performance of the year. Winning in the Little Apple as a 7.5 point road underdog. They jumped all over K-State, and was K-State coming off its bye? Maybe, let's see. Yeah, K-State was in the, favorable spot, 2 weeks to prepare, bounce back mode after that shocking loss at Houston, and ASU just jumps all over them. And the Wildcats, they had won all their home games this year, and they were 11-1 straight up in their 12 previous home games, and they fall down 21-0, like by 10-10 left in the second quarter. Levitt threw 3 touchdown passes right out of the gate. And then they get a field goal on their first drive early in the third, and they're up 24-0 in cruise control. Now, K-State finally scored with 2:51 left in the third. But yeah, this one was pretty much out of reach. From early second quarter on, they cruised, and Cam Scatteraboo, he's having a great year. He missed the previous game. He returned. Didn't have his best game, 25 workman-like carries, only 73 yards, but he did have 4 catches for 44 yards. And now on the season, 1,074 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, 5.4 yards per carry average. And he also is great catching it out of the backfield, 31 receptions, 448 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Levitt has enjoyed a breakout redshirt freshman campaign, 17-4 TDI-NT ratio, and he also makes plays with his legs. 348 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, 4.5 yards per carry average. And look, I don't really have anything bad to say about BYU. This is a play on, on Arizona State. We've got home field advantage. I think we got the quarterback advantage, and I feel confident we've got the head coaching advantage. And we're only laying 3. Give me ASU.
All right, my man. I'm betting that game. I don't know if I'm making it a premium play, but I'm going to be on ASU at that point, and maybe I'll do a first quarter, first half. Maybe I'll just kind of keep hitting that baby. I cannot wait to go to that game and enjoy it. It is going to be wonderful. We're also bringing Dane's friend It's just going to be a tremendous experience. So I'll be with you on that. I'll send you a picture, Brian. When we're down there.
I better warn you though. I mean, my only trip in my life to Tempe did not go well.
Well, as long as you're not there, then all right. I'll just
okay. I'm not going to be there.
I'll see what it looks like.
You know what? You know what that trip to Tempe was?
No.
62-24 Nebraska, 1995. Tommy Frazier still running.
Oh my God,
they beat my Gators.
Yeah, that's brutal.
National championship game, BCS championship game.
Well, there you go. It's still a beautiful stadium. They did some remodeling. It's right in the mountains there, so I'm excited for that one. Josh, great friend of the show, talking weather here out in Laramie. Laradice, he calls it, Boise State over there. I mean, I don't see, I'm looking at a site. I don't see 44 mile per hour gusts, but I didn't check my weather.gov site yet. That's what I look at for gusts. Well, hell yeah, man. It's going to be a running game. If that's the case, then I'll just take Wyoming's team total under because I think Genty is going to get 300 freaking yards this game because Wyoming has zero rush defense. They can stack the box as much as they want. That might even be worse for them. And you'll get some explosive plays. So I'm taking the team total under, Josh. That is, and he just threw out Windfinder. Yeah, that's a good one. And I'm with you, man. Under or team total under for me. So that's my thoughts on that one, my friend. Thanks for chiming in on that, baby.
So my first cousin, Daisy Grace Doddridge, her boyfriend is Wyoming's. He made his second career start last week. Caden Anderson. He had a really good game his first start. Led him to a comeback win at New Mexico. Not so much last week, 13 of 30, 120 yards, but I can't say anything bad about the Wyoming offense, so I'm not going to.
All right, we will definitely hold you to that then, because if you were going to say something bad, I was going to send them the link, but apparently not. So next game, Colorado versus Kansas. Kansas, I wrote +3. It's 2.5. Total's 59.5. This is one did I pick that? Yeah, I think I picked this one. With this one, I like Kansas, but I only like them at 3. So I would say wait this out, and then you're going to get a bunch of Colorado money in by Saturday for sure. I like Colorado, and I was on them a couple times. I was on them last week, so that was nice to see them. I actually took an alt line on them -20 and +213 and hit that too, but that got dicey.
Nice.
Got dicey at the end. Colorado's defense is still suspect, but this is just a Kansas team that they were way better than they should have, or they underperformed all year. They should have been better, and then the bye week kind of fixed them. And I like Lance Leopold a lot. I would look towards the over this game, but I also like Kansas +3. I just think the reason you see Kansas higher in the rankings than their record shows is that they just kind of choked away games there, And Jalen Daniels has now kind of figured it out. It took Leopold a while after they lost Koltanecki to Penn State as an offensive coordinator, but now they're running through teams. They took Iowa State out 45-36. Their defense isn't that good, so that's why I kind of still like the over a little bit, even at 59.5. But they go to BYU in a night game in Provo. They win there. They actually did play a little defense there. I think they fixed some things. I like the 3, but I don't like 2.5. So Brian, I'm going with that. Any disagreement or agreement?
Well, I had BYU last week, so I got burned by Kansas. I'm not implying it's one of my favorites, but it's Colorado or pass for me, just because, 8 straight spread covers, small number here. They're probably going to get Jimmy Horn back, which will be a nice boost. And the offense is just been dynamite. Look, the last 7 games, 38, 48, 28, but the 28 game is when Horn and Hunter left pretty early in the K-State game. 34, 34, 41, 49. That offense is just humming. So it's Colorado or pass for me. I haven't bet Colorado yet, and I probably should, because I agree with you, and you're speculating that it'll move to 3 because Colorado is such a public team these days, especially with these 8 straight spread covers.
Yeah,
so
they are.
But I mean, I don't love it. I just got burned by Kansas, and Kansas is obviously playing a lot better. Kind of caught fire here late, and so it's Colorado pass for me though.
All right, good stuff. Well, I have to step out for 1 second, but I'm gonna let you start on Missouri versus Mississippi State. You picked this one. Mississippi State's a home dog of plus 7.5, total 57.5. Why don't you fire away, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I made Missouri 10.5. For those that may have missed last week's game, South Carolina's absolutely on fire, and Missouri went in there and gave them hell. In fact, Missouri, an unbelievable touchdown catch by Luther Burden with 1:02 left, gave them a 30-27 lead. But then Lenoris Sellers and Rocket Sanders made some fantastic plays, and South Carolina was able to get the game-winning touchdown with 15 seconds left. But I thought it was one of the better efforts of the season from Missouri, and certainly it was a game that they could have won. And so, we didn't know going into it if Brady Cook was going to play, but he did play and played pretty good, especially for not being 100%. 21 of 31, 237 yards, had a touchdown and a pick. And Nate Noel, 27 carries for 150 yards and 1 touchdown. And I just think Missouri's weapons with Theo Weiss and Luther Burden and Norfleet and Marquise Johnson, I think they're just going to have a little too much offense for Mississippi State. Now, Mississippi State, they've covered a lot of numbers this year. Covered their last time out. They are in the advantageous spot, but I think that advantageous spot has been compensated for perhaps a little too much. And so now I have to have 7, and so I've already bet it. And I bought the half point to 7. I'm looking for it on the board to see if it's still 7.5. Oh, here we go. Looks like a couple of books have moved to 8. So I would say, if you're tailing me and agreeing with my opinions, I would buy the half point to 7. But I mean, if it's 8, I don't like it as much. But I don't want to buy the half or buy the whole point. It's just too much juice. But Mizzou minus 7 for me at minus 120 or maybe minus 125 juice. Yeah,
there's a few 8s out there. It's mostly 7.5. Little disagreement on this side because I was looking a little bit more Mississippi State, but I'm not certain I'm going to bet it. This could just remain a lean that I don't bet. My problem with Mississippi State. I already said my problem with Missouri. I feel like last week was kind of crushing to this team, and they're just not necessarily going to be a big cover team. If they're at home, it'd be a little different here. But the Bulldogs is hard to gauge. They're out of everything, but they have Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl coming up, and so they do have a look-ahead spot, and that's what worries me, too, about betting Mississippi State. Maybe they just kind of say, screw this week, we're not making a bowl, we have 2 freaking wins. They don't even have an SEC win, so you wonder if that matters to them. But they have Ole Miss on deck, so it's a bad spot for them from a look-ahead standpoint. But, I think it's still a lot of points, so I do understand what Brian's saying to get it down to 7. It's not a play at 8 points or 7.5 points. I picked USC versus UCLA late. I finally got to the board on this one, Brian. UCLA plus 5, total 51.5. USC had that big quarterback change to Maeva, who played for UNLV last week, right? Or last year, I meant to say. And it looks like UNLV picked right back up with their 2 quarterbacks, and they still have Haj Malik Williams. But more importantly, I look at UCLA, and when they beat Nebraska, they went just rough and tough with them. And I'm not so sure Deshaun Foster is going to be a great coach or not. But one thing I noticed about UCLA is that players like him. He's almost like that players coach, like the Lovie Smith type situation. Tomlin. The players like him. They gravitate towards him. They're trying for him. And this is a rivalry game. And USC.
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, USC.
No, you go ahead.
So if I look at what USC did on the road this year, Brian, it's been pretty bad. They haven't won a road game. I think they went to Minnesota and lost by 7 points. That was more of a coin flip game, but they go to Maryland and blow it. They go to Washington and lose by 5 points. They can't win on the road. They went to Michigan early and lost. They're a terrible road team. And even though it's across, the city, I guess at UCLA, it's still a road environment. They got Notre Dame on deck. They probably think a little Notre Dame. They're not making no playoffs. They have 5 wins. I think it's a coverable spread for UCLA, and they're back at it. Garbers is there. I like UCLA plus the 4.5.
Yeah, I'm a lean to UCLA. I made the number 3. And like you were saying, they are playing hard for Deshaun Foster, and they've pretty much had, 6 pretty good efforts in a row. I mean, they easily cover at Penn State. I mean, it was a 27-11 loss, but I mean, easily covered that one. And then they do lose a tough one to Minnesota, 21-17. But then the one that really caught my attention was they go to Rutgers across the country. They win outright. Then they get an open date. They beat Nebraska, and then they beat Iowa. Now they do lose at Washington last week, but that's got them in bounce back mode here. They do have 4 wins, and they've got Fresno State on deck. So they're playing for their bowl eligibility here. And I lean UCLA. I'm not positive that I'll play it, but my lean is to the Bruins.
All right, good stuff. Let's move on to maybe the best game of the weekend, Indiana versus Ohio State. It was 13. Now it's 13.5, and Ohio State money keeps coming in. The look ahead was 10.5. The total of this, it's back down to 13. Total's 51.5. So we got some news today, and Brian knows it. Their center's out. Ohio State center's out. That's bad. They already lost a left tackle this year. Ohio State is that talented team that should be able to get margin against people. But, man, when they're just off, they can be pretty off, and you saw that against Nebraska and some of those other teams, So I have an Indiana ticket to make the playoffs at 200-1.
Whoa, my man!
I know. I've been sweating that one.
At what point did you buy that?
I bought it in July.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if that was still available like week 3 or week 4.
No, dude. And I actually have them to win the conference also at 200-1. But
my man, let's go.
I hope so, man. But here's the thing, and I've talked about it a few times on this show and a couple others. My worry is they get completely trounced. And what you said could happen happens. Maybe they leave them out. I don't think they're going to leave them out, even if they get trounced. I think that they're going to say it's a 1-loss Big Ten team. That's why you have 12 playoff teams. But I'm still nervous. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm probably going to take a Purdue money line bet for like 30-1. Maybe throw $100 on it or something. You get like $3,000 in case the rivalry game gets some. I've seen crazier shit happen in college football. Sure. But, man, I have a lot riding on this game already. But I will also say that I don't like the way Ohio State starts games. And I think that with their center out, it's really going to fuck them up in the first quarter and in the first half. I think the fact that Kirk Cignetti starts games amazingly, as a matter of fact, the only times that teams tend to come back on them is the second half. We saw Michigan do it a couple weeks ago. You saw a little bit of Washington kind of come back a little bit. It makes me say that I like the first half. I think they cover the first half, and it's 7.5. You can get Indiana plus 7.5 in many books right now for the first half. Now, am I concerned that guys like Smith and Gugba or whatever his name is, Tate, some of those studs that they got can get separation, catch the ball over the head, and score 3 touchdowns in like 5 minutes? Yes, I'm definitely concerned for that. And that could happen in the second half, but I don't think it's going to happen in the first half, so I'm making a play. Ohio State loses the first half or doesn't cover over 7.5. Indiana plus 7.5 for the first half.
Yeah, I like Indiana. I've been kind of waiting and hoping I was going to be able to get a clean 14. And so you told me the 13.5s are gone.
Well, not necessarily all of them. I was just looking at DraftKings. So let me pull it up while you talk.
Where is it at on the board?
No, there's a ton of 13.5s. There's Caesars is 13.5, Circa, ESPN Bet, FanDuel, I think. Yeah. That's
how far down the board is it? Okay, I found it. All right, I found it.
Okay.
Yeah, 13.5. So it's the best you can do right now, but I mean, it's only Wednesday. I mean, I'm just going to wait it out and hopefully get 14. And if it doesn't come, I'll just buy the half point to 14, or if it settles at 13, I'll be fine with just 13. So I don't think anybody is disputing that Ohio State's got, more talent and certainly more big game experience. But even though they're on the road, the spot favors Indiana, having had 2 weeks to prepare. I mean, the last time they had an open date, they put it on Nebraska 56-7, and they were only favored by 6.5 in that game. And one or actually two things I think that are, or maybe three, because one, it's a favorable spot with 2 weeks to prepare and get healthy, and then I put a lot of stock in head coaching and quarterback play, and I mean those are like the two things that stand out the most to me with every matchup. And I feel really confident in saying that we've got the better quarterback. Curtis Rourke, 21-4, TDI and T ratio, 71.8 completion percentage, 2,410 yards. And keep in mind, he missed a game and a half. He's also got a couple rushing touchdowns. He's better than Will Howard. And every statistical category you look at, it'll tell you that. Howard probably has a lot more rushing yards, but and then I think we have an even more comfortable advantage in the head coaching department, because Kurt Cignetti, I mean, he hasn't won a natty like Kirby has, but to me, Kurt Cignetti is one of the top 3 or 4 head coaches in all of college football right now. Wow. Ryan Day is not in my top 10. So when you have an open date to get ready and the opponent does not, and you have a better quarterback and you have a better head coach and you are catching double digits and you're undefeated and you're brimming with confidence. And look, they had a 17-3 lead over Michigan at halftime. Let's not forget, Michigan still got a lot of really good NFL players on that defense. I know Will Johnson wasn't playing that game, but they got a lot of studs that are going to play in the NFL for a long time on that defense. So struggling against Michigan's defense in the second half, it's the first time they've struggled offensively all year. They have been pounding teams all year, beating them all by 14 or more, even Washington when Rourke was out. I like Indiana catching the points.
Yeah. Well, that's music to my ears, Brian. I hope you're right about that. It'd be great to be able to possibly cash in or hedge against Oregon in the title game for my other part of the bet that was to win the conference. So that could happen. I did not expect any Big Ten team to be undefeated this late in the season. Wisconsin almost nipped Oregon last week, as you know. That was very, expected, I suppose. I never felt like Wisconsin was going to win that game when I was watching it. I liked how they fought, but, a lot of things went against them, and they just don't have a quarterback. So, they need to win this game, and so Indiana's got to win it to play in the conference championship.
Yeah. I didn't play Wisconsin last week just because I just don't feel like I can trust them. But I remember in the summer, I don't know if it was on this show or on my podcast, that and by the way, let me get a plug for the podcast. Bets and Ball Games on the Southeastern 16 YouTube channel. I called this that spot last week for Oregon at Wisconsin, I called it the most difficult spot of any team all year long. I mean, it was their third trip east in 5 weeks. Wisconsin had 2 weeks to prepare. I figured it was going to be cold. It wasn't that cold, though, was it?
No, it wasn't too bad. It was cold enough, though. Okay. Dude, 40 degrees in Wisconsin, that's cold. I mean, no matter how you slice it, it's uncomfortable. It's a night game. The crowd was loud. Yeah, it's not an ideal situation for any team. It was a great call by you, but, sometimes we got to bet those calls we make, Brian.
I know, exactly. It's a great call by me that I did not even bet on. So I probably should have not even pointed it out. I just didn't feel like I could trust Wisconsin.
No, that's funny. So, it's funny. They're playing Nebraska, and Nebraska hasn't even beaten Wisconsin since 2010-11 when they joined the Big Ten. I give our buddy Tony George a lot of crap about that. He's texting me nonstop this year about Nebraska, driving me nuts. But Wisconsin's a 2.5-point dog. Now they just fired Phil Longo. Now, does this get the same coach firing bump? Probably not. But Phil Longo also doesn't seem to me to be a really likable guy. Maybe this gives them a bump here, and they just go to Nebraska and take care of business after knowing they could have got Oregon last week. It's hard to figure out what you're going to get. Now, it's 2.5. I have no rush to bet this. I kind of hope that it gets to a 3, then I might have to invest a little in Wisconsin. But hodgepodge-wise, that's what I'm eyeing up, Brian. I already said I was eyeing up the Utah State coming up here. What about Ole Miss, Florida? Well, you got Florida Gators plus 10. Is their quarterback playing? Total 55.5. I assume.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of things going on here. So I've got a lot of money on Ole Miss's season win total over 9.5. So I have no room for error, and if they win this game, they're favored by 27.5 at FanDuel on the look-ahead line to Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. So basically, I've got my season win total bet on the line here. And with that being the case, now look, Lagway played good. He's got a great arm. He's really good.
Oh, by the way, we cashed that baby for Florida last week over 4.5. We cashed that. We talked about that early this season.
True.
So there you go.
It
came through, and I was thinking Brian's probably pissed because he wants Napier fired. Is what I was thinking.
Right. And I still want him fired. But so look, I made the line 10. I think it's a good line. Now Lagway was effective last week, but that hamstring's still not 100%. And let's be clear, Ole Miss has a vastly superior defensive line than LSU. And so how much has Lagway's hamstring improved this week? I think is a big deal. And we don't know that answer. I don't think we're going to know that answer until they start playing. But he's going to have to use his mobility, of which he has plenty of. I mean, he's an outstanding runner, but he was, had enough mobility last week to, move around in the pocket and stuff, but you didn't see him taking off running at all. He's going to need that this week because Ole Miss gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And so, but it's hard to, we're not going to know if he's how good the hamstring is. He's going to play. He's going to play, but yeah. No. So anyhow, but with all that said, I've got to hedge a little bit. I mean, and I think if Lagway, if he's hamstring is, like 95%, then I think Florida is going to hang in here and probably cover the spread. Now, I think it'll take a special performance from Lagway for them to win. And Florida's got some guys that are banged up, too, that hopefully will get back, like Pup Morgan. We'll know more about that tonight with the injury report. He was out last week, but it was the first game he's missed all year. Now, we've got a bunch of season-ending injuries, but Devin Moore, the corner who's missed, he got hurt late in the Georgia game. He had an interception in that game and an interception the week before. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get back, but if he could, that would be a big boost. But I would really want Pup Morgan. He is good against the run, against Ole Miss's running game. That would be a big boost for Florida. But I've got this big bet on Ole Miss season win total, so I have to hedge with Florida a little bit plus 10 and a little bit on the money line. And I really can't lose because if Ole Miss, wins my season win total bet, that's great. I'm going to have a lot more on that than the little minor hedges. But if Florida wins and I lose my season win total bet, I'm going to have some money line on the Gators and on plus the points, and it'll be my Gators. And I have some Ole Miss friends and they've been talking a lot of shit. So they were also talking a lot of shit in 2015 when we absolutely mauled Schwag Kelly. And I saw one of the buddies at a UFC party last Saturday night, and I was like, are you gonna go back to the swamp? And he's like, maybe, probably. You didn't learn your lesson. In other words, I want to be able to talk shit to him. I want to be able to talk shit back to him. So I can't lose in this game. So that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, you can't lose, my man. That's always a great situation.
Well,
Got your team going.
Let me throw out one more stat. Napier was 6-2 against the spread, with 0 outright wins, though, in 8 games as a double-digit underdog going into the Texas game. Now, they didn't cover that game, so he's 6-3 in 9 double-digit dog spots. But that was a third-string quarterback, so I kind of wiped that one away. And that's not – y'all know I hate Napier. I mean –
I live bet Texas that game. It got down to 19.5. I'm like, okay. I did that in the first quarter.
Good bet.
Yeah.
Good bet.
South Alabama. Josh wants to know about South Alabama, Southern Miss. Significant position on Jags minus 21.5. I think you're fine. I think Southern Miss quit on the season. South Alabama's been a buy-on team since that Troy win. It was actually since the Arkansas State loss, and then they had that bye week. And then, since Troy, they've been awesome. I was on South Alabama last week, plus 7.5 against Louisiana. Now, I think Louisiana might get hurt their quarterback, but I do know.
Yeah. He's out. Woolridge, I saw that earlier today. He's out. He's out. I mean, he might be able to back for the bowl game, maybe.
They were up by 24 to 3 at that point, and then they came back. But it's more the South Alabama's just been a play-on team for me since then. So, yeah, I mean, I think Southern Miss is completely toast. I mean, scoring 3 points against Marshall a couple of weeks ago. Texas State if you can't score in Texas State, you're done. The season's over. And they're very injured. We did discuss that last week, South Alabama. So that was a wonderful win. But I agree with you. You might even wait it out and get a 21 too. So just I agree with you real quick on that, Josh. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, Gio Lopez is an absolute stud for South Alabama. I love that kid. He's really good.
I agree. He's kind of the heart and soul of that team, And it's funny. I thought they were going to take a bigger step back after losing everybody, but Gio Lopez is a freshman, 66%, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. This team's just going to keep getting better and better. I'm trying to look in the Sun Belt. They're 14-1 to win the Sun Belt, And maybe we should talk about this on Beer Bet Bangers. I don't think they can make the championship. Well, actually, I think they can because they just have a loss at Arkansas State and they have the Georgia Southern loss. James Madison was a team I thought was going to be in there. Georgia Southern gets the nod over them, so they just got to win at Coastal and home against App State, which they can. And so I assume that they won't make the game. I don't know. I guess what's the tiebreak between them and James Madison? But I just saw them at 14-1. I was like, holy cow. But what's funny about our Beer Bet Bangers, Brian, I got one, and it's ASU plus 380 to win the Big 12. And I think I already got a nice little spot here because, hey, they're favored over BYU. You look at all the power ratings, BYU is a better team according to power ratings. No, the market's saying no, and I agree with the market here. Let's just say they win. They got U of A on deck, and U of A, they should just donkey stomp, right? U of A is terrible. And that brings them right to the championship game where they're going to play either Colorado or maybe you get lucky and Colorado drops a game. That could happen. Colorado could drop a game this week at Kansas. Probably not to Oklahoma State at home, but you never know. I think plus 380 is a great price, and that's my Beer Bet Banger for this week, Brian.
So am I supposed to have a Beer Bet Banger?
If any plus money, if you like some plus money, then that's a Beer Bet Banger. For one.
Right. What was my other underdog that I had besides Kentucky?
You had
yeah. Maybe Indiana money line. I'm not against the little baby play. Indiana money line. What are they money line? Let's see here. Are they plus 400?
Yeah, probably. 13.5. I would say it's about 350, 400, 370 at DraftKings. So why don't you go with that? See if
There we go.
Your money
There's
line,
my beer bet banger.
your beer bet banger will make me a lot of beer too. So I'm hoping for that.
That's right.
To come through.
201. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they're in the playoffs. So they win this one for sure. And even if they don't,
no questions asked.
Absolutely. So yeah, that would be great. And then now would just have to worry about the conference championship. But no, that's great. And yeah, I mean, somebody do the math on this South Alabama to make the conference championship game. Josh, maybe you can let us know. Let me know later. Shoot me a message. I'm curious what the tiebreak rules are for Sunbelt. You know, these tiebreak rules, man, Brian, they're all over the freaking place per conference. I don't understand them.
Right.
They're tough to think about. But I think South Alabama and James Madison are probably the best Sunbelt teams. I'm just wondering, if it's worth it to grab the 14-1 or not. But anyways, any quick NFL before we go?
Yeah, I'm gonna bet Washington every way you can against the Cowgirls. First half, first quarter, game, team total over, all that. They're gonna absolutely smash the Cowgirls, who are on a short week, and Washington has extra rest. So I say bet the Commanders any way you want. So down in my Survivor, I mean, I'm not in Circa Millions, but there's 23 large and change available. We started with 1,552. We've been stuck on 17 for like 3 weeks, but I'm one of 17.
Nice.
I'm
great.
Yeah,
job.
I'm debating. So I have the Chiefs, but next week is when it's kind of hairy for me. So I could go Buccaneers this week and save the Chiefs for at home against the Raiders next week. Or my other option next week would be, or my best option next week if I use Kansas City this week would be Green Bay at home to the Dolphins. But the Dolphins are kind of scary right now, playing a little better, So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. It's Wednesday. I have to have it in but before the Thursday night kickoff. So we'll see. What would you do, Kiev?
Oh, my God. I hate it when people ask me that because I lost on week 2 on the Ravens against the Raiders, which was...
Oh, but you never should have lost that.
Fucking ref. Yeah, that pass interference that's like on every single play, wide receiver. Yeah, it makes no sense to me. But anyways, I would not go with the Giants. I mean, with the Tampa Bay because the Giants have that
too much
weird
respect for Tommy Cutlets.
It's too much respect for the fact that they're gonna. It's a different situation when that Italian DeVito comes in. It's just
Tommy Cutlets. Cutlets.
Yeah, it's just. I've seen him pull shit out of his ass that he shouldn't have in the past, and this is I'm going to pull shit out of my ass game. It's one of those day ball specials. I do like Tampa a lot more because they got Evans back. But it's not them. I can't take a road team, even though the Giants have been absolutely putrid at home. It's not that. Do you have Washington? Everyone's playing Washington probably.
I used Washington against the Browns.
Okay, if you used Washington, then obviously a lot of people, the second most people use the Dolphins -7.5 against the Patriots.
I've already used the Dolphins.
Okay.
I can't. There's no home teams really available for me this week. I'm the same way. I like to use home teams, but I mean, here we are. We're late November. You gotta, there's just no home teams really that I even have left at all, or they're all underdogs, or I don't have them left.
I don't like
I have Seattle left, but I'm not using Seattle against Arizona.
I like Arizona that week, or that
right.
And so you don't have Houston against the Titans either. Then it sounds like you probably used them against the Bears week 2 or 3.
I mean, I have used Houston. I could use Green Bay, but I mean, I don't want to mess with San Fran.
What about the Chiefs? You want to say?
No, I can use them.
I would use.
I can use them.
I would use the Chiefs. They're not losing 2 in a row.
Yeah, well, so that was my only options in my mind were the Bucks and the Chiefs. But if I don't use the Chiefs, if I use the Chiefs this weekend, then my best option next weekend is Green Bay at home to Miami. And I don't feel great about that one. In other words, I feel like
don't you have
Tampa.
Wait, what else do we have on Thanksgiving?
I could use my best game next week would be Kansas City against the Raiders if I don't use Kansas City this week. And by the way, let me throw this out. Carolina's won back-to-back games and has had 2 weeks to prepare. I mean, Kansas City might just no-show this one. I mean, I don't think it's a guarantee Kansas City wins.
It's not, but it's after a loss. You know, they went to Buffalo, they lost. This is Andy Reid off a loss. You know, it's a situation where the embarrassment would just be too much for this team. Now, they did show that shit last year against the Raiders too, but I like Kansas City a lot more than I do the Tampa Bay Bucks. You know, Tampa Bay's defense is pretty dang bad. I think a lot of people are on the Packers. I think the Niners cover, so I can't tell you the Packers. You know, what about the Broncos at the Raiders?
I've already used the Broncos.
Oh God, use the Broncos, yeah. And I wouldn't take the Vikings at the Bears either. That's just a weird game. You're just out of options, my friend.
I do have the Vikings. But I mean, I can't. I would have to use Kansas City before I would use the Vikings.
I would use Kansas City if I were you, but hey, you make your choice. I don't want
to
lose this one.
I like getting other input. Yeah, no, I'm probably going to use Kansas City.
Yeah. Well, where can people find you so they can give you their advice on what to do in Survivor this weekend?
Yes, at Vegas B Edwards on Twitter, and you can find my content on MajorWager.com, and you can hit me up on my email, briane.edwards11@gmail, Brian with an I, and we can discuss picks and whatnot. And then I've got a podcast on the YouTube channel Southeastern 16, as in like 16 SEC teams, Southeastern 16. My podcast comes out every Thursday late afternoon. And there you go, man. Oh. It was always fun. It always is fun. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, I love having you, Brian. Thanks again. Brian's got an eye for great plays, so make sure you check out Mr. Vegas Edwards on Twitter and check out his wonderful podcast. Now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by This Season. For the biggest sports contest in all the land, please visit www.theszn.com/OB for a discount. Terms, conditions, and location apply. All right, let's talk some sharp college football, man. Week 13, where's the time go? It is flying. Sharp money on Northwestern, plus 13 to plus 10.5 at Michigan, 82% of the money, or the tickets, and 82% of the money as well. Vanderbilt plus 11 down to plus 7.5 at LSU, 85% of the tickets and 99% of the money. Virginia Tech minus 2.5 to minus 3.5 at Duke, 86% of the tickets and 86% of the money. Alabama minus 12 to minus 13.5, 59% of the tickets and 64% of the money on Bama. And Missouri minus 6.5 to minus 7.5 at Mississippi State. 96% of the tickets and 98% of the money. Sharp totals. Iowa versus Maryland over 42.5 to 45.5, 95% of the tickets, 95% of the money. Ole Miss versus Florida under 60.5 to 55.5, 30% of the tickets and 49% of the money. James Madison versus App State under 61 to 58.5, 40% of the tickets and 72% of the money. Kentucky versus Texas over 46.5 to 47, 85% of the tickets and 96% of the money. And San Diego State versus Utah State under 64.5 to 61, 69% of the tickets and 87% of the money. For a quick recap, Brian likes Kentucky plus 21, ASU minus 3, Missouri minus 7, Indiana plus 13.5, and I like TCU minus 11.5, Kansas plus 3, UCLA plus 4.5, and Indiana first half plus 7.5 for our plays.
You better lock it up. You better lock it up. No, you lock it up. You lock it up. Lock it up. Lock it up.
Please.
My friends, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions for us, feel free to tweet us at The Oddsbreakers. Email us at info@theoddsbreakers.com. We'll be back for some NFL in a day. Have a great rest of your week and go get some winners.